Minister for Higher Education.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Speaker. I support the Minister of Public Service in the amendment of the PILAG that is brought forth with in observing some of the functions of that institution, but also changing the name from PILAG to SILAG. I welcome the very articulated comments made by the member for Polye on this issue, and I'd like to speak to some of them. Mr. Acting Speaker, the Public Service Minister has established very clearly and competently the governance and leadership of the institution. Governance and leadership of an institution, not only the SILAG now, or the PILAG, but also in other institutions, in my observation, has become a very challenging, demanding issue for Papua New Guinea. I've observed in other institutions of higher learning in the universities, as well as the technical colleges, institutes, teachers' colleges, nursing colleges, etc. I think the same can be observed in SOEs and departments and so forth, and state organizations, that the governance and leadership has been one area of wanting in the country that must be addressed properly, because the overall operations of the entity or the institution relies on the leadership provided by the board or the governing council of any entity. I've observed that, Mr. Acting Speaker, the compromise of the people on the board has a lot to do with the performance of the systems in the echelon of the structure of implementation by the body. It's very important because many times we complain and we find grievances raised by the public of lack of performance, people not meeting the key targets, the objective of the organization. You find the quality declining, and I find that is quite common to the higher education sector that I am entrusted with by the good Prime Minister to look after. I find leadership and governance as a very important issue. So there are two areas that I see that has affected the compromising of the leadership and governance. The first is the politicization. Like me, for example, let me take myself as a case to illustrate a point. If I want in the University of Papua New Guinea a friend of mine or one talk of mine to become the chair or the chancellor, and then therefore I would like somebody, the vice chancellor, to be also my one talk or my schoolmate or my buddy. And then it goes down the other positions that are there. Then, Mr. Acting Speaker, if I'm rogue and if I'm short-sighted, what I would do is I would now use the powers given me under the Education General Provisions Act to push appointment of my friends. And that really has affected, I see, the whole of public service machinery, especially very important institutions like the PILAG or the SILAG we are now referring to. I'd like to urge all of us that we must understand the appointments of those key people at the governance and leadership level, at the board level, is very key, because they are the people who determine the operations and quality output and implementation of government policy. And I'm very happy that the Public Service Minister is very confidently and confidently articulated on this amendment that is brought before this House, that he will address that and put competent people up there. And I also know that it is the policy of the Mara Barroso government to making sure people appointed are people with credibility, not with political expediency, but those will be making the institutions and the states that the state bodies they look after are properly governed and under the rule of law, and monies, management, operation matters achieve quality, because that's where it lies. The second point I'd like to raise is the quality of the programs or the academic programs given out from an institution. Like PILAG or SILAG, for in this case, now I heard the member for Polye talked about quality programs, academic research has come out, and Minister of Public Service mentioned to that. Mr. Acting Speaker, what we are doing at the higher education space is we will not register any institute or any college or any university that does not meet the standard of registration. I'm driving that quite vehemently. The standard must be the standard that meets or benchmarks against some of the best business practices and academic practices in the world over. So Papua New Guinea standards are high at that level. So when you have programs that are disseminated or imparted to those students coming in, or the trainees in the leadership sector or in the governance sector, you find they par at the international level. So that means they can now manage the areas that they put the responsibilities that come under them, but they only not managed by Papua New Guinean so-called standard or so-called cultural way, but they do it what the best businesses and companies and institutions and businesses and colleges of the world, some of the best world are doing. So they will meet the registration standard requirement under the Marabe government. The second thing we're also looking at is the programs that the Minister for Public Service related to. The programs, the academic programs that are being taught in the institution. They must be properly accredited. Accreditation standard of international standard must be met at those institutions. So, Mr. Acting Speaker, the standard is very important because when you have somebody passing out of those colleges or the institute, the PILAG Institute, you are confident that they will administer as a secretary of a department or as an MD of a SOE or a vice chancellor or a chancellor of an institution in Papua New Guinea, the best they can deliver in terms with the quality output. Mrs. Acting Speaker, let me also say that one of those things I've observed is, let me use the medical fraternity as an example without putting anybody off. And that's a fact I'm speaking, because somebody is a good doctor in the hospital, therefore the mindset and the impression upon one has been, Mr. Acting Speaker, that he would be the best manager of that hospital. But I think I differ from that view. See, the best specialist in one particular area cannot be the best manager of a broader scale of management or governance. And therefore, their PILAG is right there. Therefore, PILAG is there. For those who want to become CEOs of hospitals, even those who want to become CEOs or the vice chancellors of universities must go through this institute to qualify for this accredited, this well-registered course that have been taught in PILAG or CILAG. Like, because somebody is a PhD holder and therefore somebody is, oh, I'm the professor of chemistry. And we say, oh, hallelujah, that's good. He's the professor and therefore he'll be a good vice chancellor. Mr. Acting Speaker, I've observed again, it does not work. You see his mindset. He or she is specialized in that area. And we are very proud of Papua New Guineans who are experts in those areas. But management is different. Administration is different. Governance is different. The rule of law is different. Following process and procedures of governance in public service in Papua New Guinea is different. Therefore, the CILAG now called is the right place to go to. And therefore, I say those who want to become managers, CEOs, MDs, secretaries, or vice chancellors must go through the CILAG to say that, look, I've gone through this leadership training process, and therefore I can deploy some of these leadership techniques in all these institutions, Mr. Acting Speaker. And finally, the change from PILAG to Sumare, CILAG to Sumare, naming after the Grand Chief Sir Michael, I think it's a good idea. It's a good idea because there's another proposition I think the Governor for East CPIC and other members, Mr. Acting Speaker, have been talking about. I think also the Honorable Prime Minister has also alluded to that we should have a university called the Somare University in East CPIC, which I'm also working on to get it done. But to start off, I think this is a right honor we're giving to the Grand Chief, who actually is the first Prime Minister, but also this institution was established in 1963, is around the same time when the Grand Chief went in. And he was a politician around that time and became the Prime Minister then. So I think it is fitting that we call it CILAG, but to give honor to even Sumare, or even other leaders like Sir Julius Chen, one of the pioneers who is still here. and other good leaders who have gone before us. To honor them, it is to give good governance. It is to give the quality leadership. It is to making sure the programs are properly accredited to international standard. It is to making sure leadership is provided in those areas that we find so wanting in our country today. And we should support this. Probably that's the best thing we're doing to improve quality, but also to honor somebody with those qualities when we name after him. Thank you, Mr. Acting Speaker.